hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Good evening. My name is Brad Bailey, president of Ford City Lions Club. It is truly an honor and privilege to carry on a tradition of paying homage to those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice to ensure our freedom. At this time, I'd like to introduce our speaker, James B. Bortz, a veteran of the Vietnam War. He served in the United States from 1965 to 1969.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you for coming out to this, the 70th anniversary of Ford City's Candlelight Memorial Service. This is not about you or me, but the ones who served in the military that have made their final muster. What a great honor that is. Without our armed forces, where would our country be today? This is an honor and a privilege to speak to you about my military time. This area has always been my home. I graduated from Ford City High School in 1964. My home is in Manorville, married, 2 daughters and 1 granddaughter. After graduation, the following January, I turned 18. Back then, they had the draft. If you did not have a deferment, you were classified 1A, which meant you could be called to serve in the military. So I enlisted in the United States Navy for 4 years. That way, I was guaranteed to go to an A school. After boot camp, I went to Memphis, Tennessee for school. There, I learned the jobs I would do for the rest of my 4-year enlistment. Ejection seats, oxygen, and canopy systems on jet aircraft. The pilots at the time were flying the F-8 Crusader, then they switched over to the F-4 Phantom. Was stationed at Cecil Field, Florida, then we moved up to NAS Oceana, Virginia Beach. The F-8 Crusader and the F-4 Phantom were the top-of-the-line jet aircraft during the war with North Vietnam. April of 1967, we were told the carrier I was assigned to would be the first one from the East Coast to go to North Vietnam. The USS Forrestal CVA-59 was the ship that my squadron VF-11 operated from. It was home port in Norfolk, Virginia. In June of 1967, we left Norfolk with a crew of 4,500 sailors and Marines. Down the Atlantic seaboard, through the Caribbean Sea, across the equator, then to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil for 5 days of in Port Liberty. Then across the Atlantic Ocean, down around the tip of South Africa, then up into the Indian Ocean, going to Subic Bay in the Philippines. There we took on new personnel and supplies. Then it was off to Yankee Station, which was the operating area in the Gulf of Tonkin, where the pilots flew their bombing runs to North Vietnam. All went well in the beginning. Into our 9-month deployment, we had a terrible fire and explosion on the flight deck. Loss of 134 of my shipmates and hundreds more injured seriously. We also lost the biggest part of our air wing, which was around 40 of our 60 aircraft. The damage was everywhere back aft from the flight deck level down. My berthing compartment was back aft, one deck below the flight deck. A lot of my friends never got out of the compartment that day. Of the 134 that died, 48 of them were from my squadron, VF-11. After the fire was brought under control, we headed back to Subic Bay in the Philippines. There they took all the bodies off and flew them to their respective hometowns with a good friend or an escort. I rode the ship home. It took us 30 days. I slept in our squadron's personnel office on a fold-up army cot. Other than my life and the clothes I was wearing that day, I lost everything I had. On the way home, I went back to our berthing compartment, broke the lock off my bunk, and picked up my wallet. It was a total burn. As I did, 2 Kennedy half-dollars from 1967 that were given to me as good luck coins fell on the deck. I picked them up and I still have them to this day. They are special and they mean a lot to me. They remind me of what happened that fateful day, July 29th, 1967 at 10:52 a.m., a Saturday morning. The ship was in dry dock for almost a year getting repaired, and while I was at Oceana, I made one more cruise to the Mediterranean Sea in the fall of 1968. What was difficult was being put back in the same berthing area where a year earlier so many of my friends died. My enlistment was up in February of 1969, so they flew me back to the States from Naples, Italy to Philadelphia, where I got discharged. Then it was home to try and lead a normal life and put it all behind me. Not an easy thing to do, and it never will be. I can go back to that terrible day in an instant. We get together every year for a reunion in a different city to pay our respects for our shipmates that died that day. Every 5 years, we have a ceremony at the Wall in D.C. On panel 24E, there are 134 names listed that I will never forget. Thank you and everyone involved with this service for letting me share my story with you. I salute all veterans from the past. My father was a World War I veteran, all present veterans, and all future veterans. Thank a veteran. It will mean a lot to them. They like to hear that. And I got one little poem I'd like to read to you about Memorial Day. On Memorial Day, we remember those who died while serving in our armed forces. They fought for the future of our country and experienced overwhelming and difficult circumstances. For many of us, it is impossible to conceive of the price they paid for us. This Memorial Day, as you visit the gravesides of those who gave their lives in service, give thanks to God for their great gift. Thank you very much.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Nice job.
Due to the coronavirus, we've had to improvise a little bit. At this time, we'd like to thank Isabel Belisek for her singing, and soon Dan Minnick will be helping us play taps. But before then,
Colors, present, colors.
thank you for your participation. Good night. God bless America, and God bless.